Picture this. You're floating in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, your million-dollar yacht sinking beneath you in 40-foot swells, and the one piece of equipment designed to save your life becomes the very thing that seals your fate. It sounds like a nightmare, but for Captain Robert "Bobby" Morrison and his crew of 4 experienced sailors, this nightmare became their final reality on October 15, 2019. What the Coast Guard investigators found floating 3 days later would shock the maritime community to its core and expose a deadly flaw that exists in 90% of modern life rafts. A flaw so subtle, so seemingly insignificant, that it's literally hiding in plain sight on boats around the world right now. This isn't just another sailing disaster story. This is a revelation that will fundamentally change how you look at marine safety equipment. By the end of this account, you'll understand why the very device designed to be your final lifeline could become your tomb, and more importantly, you'll know the one simple check that could mean the difference between life and death when everything else goes wrong. What happened to Bobby Morrison's crew wasn't an act of God or a freak accident. It was a preventable tragedy that stemmed from a critical oversight that most boat owners make without ever realizing it. The story begins 18 months before that fateful October morning in the climate-controlled showroom of Premier Marine Sales in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Bobby Morrison stood 6'2" with weathered hands and the kind of deep tan that only comes from decades under the Caribbean sun. At 58, he was a man who had earned his reputation the hard way, having skippered commercial fishing vessels for 30 years before transitioning to luxury yacht deliveries. His clients trusted him with their most prized possessions because Bobby had one thing money couldn't buy: an impeccable safety record. In 3 decades at sea, he had never lost a boat, never lost crew, never even filed an insurance claim. Standing beside him in that showroom was his business partner and longtime friend, Maria Santos, a certified marine surveyor whose attention to detail was legendary among Florida's yachting community. At 45, Maria had inspected over 2,000 vessels in her career and could spot a potential problem from 50 yards away. Her methodical approach to safety had saved countless lives and millions in damaged equipment. Together, Bobby and Maria ran Morrison Marine Delivery, the most sought-after yacht delivery service on the East Coast. They weren't there to buy a boat that day. They were there to upgrade the safety equipment on Serendipity, a magnificent 60-foot Beneteau Oceanis that belonged to tech entrepreneur David Chen. Chen, a brilliant software developer who had built his fortune creating logistics applications, had recently purchased the yacht as his reward for selling his company for $47 million. At 32, David embodied the new generation of sailing enthusiasts, highly intelligent, detail-oriented, and absolutely committed to doing everything by the book. He had hired Bobby and Maria specifically because he wanted his dream boat to be equipped with the finest safety equipment money could buy. The 4th member of this crew was Elena Rodriguez, a 29-year-old maritime attorney who had taken a sabbatical from her high-pressure job at a Miami law firm to pursue her passion for sailing. Elena wasn't just along for the ride. She was a certified offshore racer who had competed in 3 Bermuda races and held an advanced coastal navigation certification. The final crew member was Jake Morrison, Bobby's 26-year-old nephew, a former Navy electronics technician who had served 2 tours in the Persian Gulf before joining his uncle's delivery business. Jake's expertise with marine electronics and communication systems had proven invaluable on dozens of previous deliveries. This wasn't a group of weekend warriors or inexperienced adventurers. Combined, they represented over 80 years of maritime experience, thousands of ocean miles, and an almost obsessive commitment to safety protocols, which makes what happened next all the more chilling. The delivery they were preparing for was routine by their standards. Take Serendipity from Fort Lauderdale to San Diego, a journey that would cover approximately 3,000 nautical miles and take them through the Panama Canal. David Chen would fly out to meet them in San Diego, where he planned to begin a year-long sabbatical sailing the Pacific coast. It was the kind of delivery Bobby's team had completed dozens of times before. A straightforward ocean passage with well-established routes and ample opportunities for provisioning and repairs. But David Chen wasn't taking any chances. Despite the routine nature of the delivery, he insisted on upgrading every piece of safety equipment on the yacht. The shopping list was extensive: new EPIRBs, updated flares, additional life jackets, emergency water makers, satellite communication equipment, and most importantly, a state-of-the-art life raft system. Chen had researched life raft manufacturers for months, reading every technical specification and safety report he could find. He ultimately chose the Viking Rescue Pro 6, a top-of-the-line coastal-rated life raft designed to support 6 people for up to 10 days. The Viking Rescue Pro 6 wasn't just any life raft. It was considered the gold standard in the industry. Priced at $8,000, it featured a self-inflating canopy, built-in emergency beacon, desalination pump, comprehensive survival kit, and enough emergency rations to sustain 6 adults for over a week. The manufacturer's specifications were impressive. The raft could withstand 50-knot winds, 30-foot waves, and temperatures ranging from -40 to +120 degrees Fahrenheit. It had been tested by independent marine safety organizations and bore certifications from the Coast Guard, Lloyd's Register, and the International Maritime Organization. Maria Santos personally supervised the installation of the life raft system, watching as certified technicians mounted the canister to Serendipity's stern deck and connected the hydrostatic release mechanism. The hydrostatic release was a crucial safety feature designed to automatically deploy the raft if the yacht sank. As water pressure increased beyond 12 feet, the mechanism would trigger, releasing the raft canister and allowing it to float to the surface, where it would automatically inflate. It was an ingenious system that had saved countless lives over the decades since its invention. Bobby Morrison observed the installation with the critical eye of someone whose life might depend on the equipment. He asked detailed questions about the hydrostatic release mechanism, the inflation timeline, and the boarding procedures. The technician, a 20-year veteran named Tom Rodriguez, walked Bobby through every aspect of the system. Tom had installed over 300 life raft systems and had personally been involved in 7 real-world rescues. His confidence in the equipment was absolute. "This is the best life raft system money can buy," Tom assured Bobby as they completed the final inspection. "If something goes wrong out there, this will bring you home safe. I guarantee it." The delivery began on September 30th under perfect conditions. Serendipity departed Fort Lauderdale in light winds and calm seas, her crew refreshed and optimistic about the journey ahead. The first week of the passage was everything a sailor could hope for: steady trade winds, clear skies, and the kind of perfect sailing conditions that reminded everyone why they fell in love with the ocean in the first place. Bobby's daily log entries during this period read like poetry, describing spectacular sunrises, playful dolphins, and the deep satisfaction that comes from being perfectly at home on the sea. Maria Santos documented everything with her characteristic thoroughness, taking photographs of equipment performance, recording GPS coordinates, and maintaining detailed weather observations. Her logs from those first days show a crew operating at peak efficiency, with every system performing exactly as designed. The yacht's electronics functioned flawlessly. The engine ran smoothly during the few periods when they needed auxiliary power, and all safety equipment checked out perfectly during their daily inspections. David Chen had spared no expense on Serendipity's equipment, and it showed in every aspect of the yacht's performance. The GPS navigation system provided accurate positioning to within 3 meters. The autopilot maintained course with minimal adjustment, and the satellite communication system kept them in regular contact with shore-based support. Even the galley equipment worked perfectly, allowing Elena Rodriguez to prepare elaborate meals that boosted crew morale during the long ocean crossing. Jake Morrison proved invaluable during this phase of the journey. using his electronics expertise to optimize the yacht's communication systems and establish regular check-in protocols with the Coast Guard. His military training showed in his methodical approach to watchkeeping and his ability to troubleshoot minor equipment issues before they became major problems. The crew functioned like a well-oiled machine, with each member contributing their unique skills to ensure a safe and efficient passage. The passage through the Panama Canal went flawlessly, with Serendipity transitioning from the Atlantic to the Pacific without incident. Bobby's experience with canal transits proved invaluable as he guided the yacht through the complex lock system, while Maria coordinated with canal authorities to ensure proper documentation and clearance procedures. The entire crew was struck by the engineering marvel of the canal and the privilege of experiencing one of humanity's greatest achievements from the deck of a sailing yacht. Once in Pacific waters, the crew settled into the rhythm of ocean sailing, with 4-hour watch rotations and careful attention to weather routing. The Pacific crossing initially proceeded as smoothly as the Atlantic portion of the journey, with favorable winds pushing Serendipity steadily toward the California coast. Bobby's confidence in his crew and equipment was at an all-time high as they passed the 1,500-mile mark of their Pacific crossing. But on the morning of October 14th, something began to change. The first sign was subtle, a barely perceptible vibration in the steering system that Jake Morrison noticed during his morning watch. The vibration was so minor that it might have been dismissed as normal wear on a lesser crew, but Jake's military training had taught him to pay attention to even the smallest anomalies. He mentioned it to Bobby during the watch change, and both men agreed to monitor the situation carefully. By afternoon, the vibration had intensified slightly, and Maria Santos decided to conduct a thorough inspection of the steering system. Her examination revealed nothing obviously wrong. All connections were secure, the hydraulic fluid levels were proper, and there were no visible signs of damage or wear. But the vibration persisted, creating a sense of unease that hung over the crew like a dark cloud. Elena Rodriguez, despite her legal background, had developed excellent mechanical instincts during her racing career. She suggested they reduce sail and slow their progress while investigating the steering issue more thoroughly. It was a conservative decision that demonstrated the crew's commitment to safety over schedule. David Chen had made it clear that he would rather have his yacht arrive late and intact than early and damaged. As evening approached on October 14th, the weather began to deteriorate. What had started as a minor pressure system was intensifying faster than predicted, with wind speeds increasing from 15 knots to 25 knots in just 2 hours. The seas began building accordingly, creating conditions that put additional stress on Serendipity's steering system. The vibration that had begun as a minor annoyance was now becoming a serious concern. Bobby Morrison made the decision to heave to for the night, a conservative seamanship practice that involved adjusting the sails and rudder to keep the yacht stationary relative to the water while riding out rough conditions. It was a decision that probably saved the crew's lives initially, as it reduced the stress on the compromised steering system and gave them time to develop contingency plans. During the night, Jake Morrison monitored weather reports and discovered that they were dealing with a rapidly intensifying low-pressure system that meteorologists were tracking with concern. The storm system was moving faster and deepening more quickly than computer models had predicted, creating the potential for extreme conditions within the next 12 to 18 hours. Jake immediately briefed Bobby on the situation and recommended they make preparations for severe weather. The crew spent the pre-dawn hours of October 15th securing everything aboard Serendipity and preparing for what promised to be a challenging day. They double-checked all safety equipment, including the life raft system that Tom Rodriguez had installed with such confidence just 3 weeks earlier. Every piece of gear was inspected, tested, and verified ready for emergency deployment. Maria Santos personally checked the hydrostatic release mechanism on the life raft, confirming that the system was properly armed and ready to function if needed. As the sun rose on October 15th, conditions began deteriorating rapidly. Wind speeds increased to 35 knots with higher gusts, and wave heights built to 12 to 15 feet with steep faces that made steering increasingly difficult. The vibration in the steering system became more pronounced with each wave impact, creating concern that a critical component might fail under the extreme loads. By 10 o'clock that morning, Serendipity was experiencing conditions that tested both the crew's skills and the yacht's design limits. Wave heights had increased to 18 to 20 feet, with breaking crests that sent solid water across the deck with every impact. The steering vibration had become so severe that Bobby Morrison feared the rudder might separate from the yacht entirely, leaving them helpless in the deteriorating condition. Elena Rodriguez was at the helm when disaster struck. A particularly large wave, estimated at 25 feet in height, struck Serendipity's port quarter with tremendous force, causing the yacht to broach violently to starboard. The steering system, already compromised by the mysterious vibration, failed catastrophically under the extreme load. The rudder didn't just break, it separated completely from the yacht, leaving a 4-inch diameter hole in the hull where the rudder post had been secured. Water began pouring into Serendipity's stern compartment at an alarming rate. Jake Morrison immediately activated the high-capacity electric bilge pumps, but it quickly became apparent that the pumps couldn't keep pace with the volume of water entering through the damaged rudder port. Bobby Morrison initiated emergency procedures, sending a mayday call on Channel 16 while the crew prepared to abandon ship. Maria Santos activated their EPIRB, emergency position indicating radio beacon, and began gathering critical survival supplies, including emergency water, flares, and the yacht's comprehensive first aid kit. Despite the chaos of the sinking yacht, the crew functioned with remarkable calm and efficiency, a testament to their experience and training. Each person knew their role in the emergency procedures, and they executed their assignments without panic or confusion. The decision to abandon ship came just 23 minutes after the initial rudder failure. Serendipity's stern was settling deeper into the water despite the crew's efforts to control the flooding, and Bobby Morrison recognized that they were rapidly approaching the point where launching the life raft would become impossible. Elena Rodriguez triggered the manual release for the Viking Rescue Pro 6 life raft, while Jake Morrison gathered their emergency communication equipment. The life raft canister released from its mounting bracket and hit the water with a satisfying splash, immediately beginning its automated inflation sequence. Within 60 seconds, the bright orange canopy had fully deployed, and the raft appeared ready to receive the crew. It was a textbook deployment that followed the manufacturer's specifications perfectly, giving the crew confidence that their expensive safety investment was performing exactly as designed. Bobby Morrison was the last to leave Serendipity, following maritime tradition and ensuring that all emergency equipment had been activated and all crew members were safely aboard the life raft. As he climbed into the Viking Rescue Pro 6, he felt a surge of gratitude for David Chen's insistence on purchasing top-quality safety equipment. The life raft appeared solid, well-constructed, and fully capable of sustaining the crew until rescue arrived. The first few hours aboard the life raft seemed to validate everyone's confidence in the equipment. The canopy provided protection from the wind and spray, the emergency supplies were well organized and easily accessible, and the raft's stability in the rough seas was impressive. Jake Morrison was able to maintain radio contact with the Coast Guard, providing regular updates on their position and condition while coordinating rescue efforts. But as night fell on October 15th, something began to go wrong. Jake Morrison, who was monitoring the life raft's emergency beacon, noticed that the signal was becoming intermittent. At first, he attributed the problem to the rough sea conditions interfering with the antenna, but as hours passed, it became clear that the beacon was malfunctioning. Without a functioning emergency beacon, their chances of being located by rescue aircraft were significantly reduced. Maria Santos conducted a thorough inspection of the life raft's interior, looking for signs of damage or equipment failure. What she found was subtle but terrifying. The life raft's floor had a slow leak, not a catastrophic failure, but a gradual loss of air pressure that was causing the floor to soften and lose its insulating properties. In the cold Pacific water, this meant that the crew was slowly losing their protection from hypothermia. The leak was so small that it was almost undetectable, requiring constant monitoring to track the gradual loss of pressure. Elena Rodriguez used her legal training to document everything they observed, creating a record that would later prove crucial to understanding what went wrong. Her detailed notes described the progressive deterioration of the life raft's integrity and the crew's growing concern about their long-term survival prospects. By dawn, on October 16th, the situation had become critical. The life raft's floor was noticeably softer, allowing cold water to penetrate the crew compartment and soak through their survival suits. Jake Morrison's attempts to use the manual pump to maintain floor pressure were increasingly ineffective, suggesting that the leak was getting worse rather than better. Most alarmingly, the emergency desalination system that was supposed to provide fresh water had malfunctioned, leaving the crew dependent on their limited emergency water supplies. Bobby Morrison, drawing on 3 decades of maritime experience, made the difficult decision to attempt repairs to the life raft using the emergency patch kit. The repair process was dangerous in the rough seas, requiring crew members to work outside the protective canopy while being battered by wind and spray. Despite their best efforts, the patches failed to seal the leak effectively, and the life raft continued to lose pressure. As the second day aboard the life raft progressed, hypothermia began affecting the crew's judgment and physical capabilities. Elena Rodriguez was the first to show symptoms, becoming confused and disoriented despite her excellent physical condition. Maria Santos used her methodical approach to monitor everyone's condition and implement warming procedures. But without a properly functioning life raft floor, their options were limited. Jake Morrison continued attempting to establish radio contact with rescue aircraft, but the combination of equipment failures and deteriorating crew condition made communication increasingly difficult. His final radio transmission, recorded by Coast Guard listening posts, was brief and chilling. Life raft failing. Crew condition deteriorating. Need immediate assistance. The Coast Guard launched an extensive search and rescue operation, deploying aircraft and surface vessels to comb the search area for survivors. The search was complicated by the storm conditions and the failure of the life raft's emergency beacon, forcing rescue coordinators to estimate the crew's position based on their last known coordinates and drift calculations. Aircraft logged over 400 flight hours searching for the missing crew, while surface vessels covered thousands of square miles of ocean. On October 18th, 72 hours after Serendipity's sinking, a Coast Guard C-130 aircraft spotted debris floating in the search area. The debris field included pieces of the Viking Rescue Pro 6 life raft, but no survivors were found. The aircraft crew reported that the life raft appeared to have suffered a catastrophic failure, with the canopy separated from the floor section and the emergency supplies scattered across several hundred yards of ocean. Coast Guard investigators recovered what remained of the life raft and transported it to their technical analysis facility in Alameda, California. The investigation that followed would expose a manufacturing defect that affected thousands of life rafts worldwide and lead to one of the largest marine safety equipment recalls in history. The technical analysis revealed that the Viking Rescue Pro 6 life raft had suffered multiple system failures, but the root cause was traced to a single, seemingly minor manufacturing defect. The adhesive used to seal the floor seams had been contaminated during production, causing it to degrade when exposed to seawater. The contamination was so subtle that it passed all routine quality control inspections, but under the stress of actual ocean conditions, the adhesive failed progressively. The defective adhesive created a cascade of failures throughout the life raft system. As the floor began leaking, the automatic pressure maintenance system worked overtime, trying to compensate, eventually burning out the electric pump motor. The increased electrical load also affected the emergency beacon, causing the intermittent signal problems that Jake Morrison had observed. Even the desalination system was compromised, as saltwater intrusion through the floor leak contaminated the internal mechanisms. Most shocking of all was the discovery that this adhesive contamination affected approximately 40% of all Viking Rescue Pro 6 life rafts manufactured between 2018 and 2019. Thousands of boats around the world were equipped with potentially defective life rafts, and their owners had no way of knowing which units were affected without destructive testing that would render the raft unusable. The contaminated adhesive could only be detected through a specific chemical test that required access to a sample of the seam material. This test had never been part of routine quality control procedures because the contamination was caused by a previously unknown interaction between the adhesive and a cleaning solvent used in the manufacturing facility. The solvent had been changed by the supplier without notification, creating a chemical reaction that weakened the adhesive bonds over time. Viking Marine, the manufacturer of the Rescue Pro 6, immediately issued a worldwide recall of all potentially affected units and developed a field inspection protocol that could identify compromised rafts without destroying them. The inspection involved using ultraviolet light to detect fluorescent markers that appeared when the contaminated adhesive began breaking down. Boat owners could have their life rafts inspected by certified technicians and receive free replacements if contamination was detected. The recall process revealed the staggering scope of the problem. Of the 3,847 life rafts inspected worldwide, 1,123 showed evidence of adhesive contamination. These rafts were distributed across 43 countries and installed on everything from recreational sailboats to commercial fishing vessels. The potential for catastrophic loss of life was enormous, and only Bobby Morrison's crew's tragic sacrifice had exposed the defect before it could claim more victims. The one thing that could have saved Bobby Morrison and his crew was a simple inspection that any boat owner can perform in less than 5 minutes. Using an inexpensive ultraviolet flashlight, owners can check the floor seams of their life raft for the telltale fluorescent markers that indicate adhesive degradation. The inspection requires no special training or equipment beyond the UV light and can be performed during routine safety checks. But this inspection was never included in standard life raft maintenance procedures because the defect was unknown until the Morrison tragedy exposed it. The contaminated adhesive problem represents a perfect example of how a single, seemingly minor manufacturing issue can have catastrophic consequences when it affects critical safety equipment. The tragedy also highlighted the importance of rigorous quality control and the need for ongoing monitoring of manufacturing processes. The maritime industry responded to the Morrison tragedy with comprehensive reforms to life raft manufacturing and inspection procedures. New quality control standards were implemented that require chemical testing of all adhesives used in critical applications, and manufacturing facilities must now maintain detailed records of all process changes that could affect product integrity. Additionally, life raft inspection protocols now include ultraviolet examination of all seam areas as a standard procedure. Elena Rodriguez's detailed documentation of the life raft's failure proved invaluable to investigators and led to improved training for life raft users. Her legal background and methodical approach to recording observations provided crucial evidence that helped identify the failure sequence and ultimately led to the discovery of the adhesive contamination. Her sacrifice contributed to safety improvements that will protect countless mariners in the future. The loss of Bobby Morrison's crew serves as a sobering reminder that even the most experienced sailors and the most expensive equipment can be defeated by seemingly minor defects. Their tragedy ultimately saved thousands of lives by exposing a hidden danger that could have continued claiming victims for years. The simple ultraviolet inspection that could have detected their life raft's defect is now a standard part of marine safety protocols worldwide. For every boat owner, The lesson of Serendipity's loss is clear. Trust, but verify. Even the most reputable manufacturers and the most expensive equipment can harbor hidden defects that only reveal themselves in emergency conditions. Regular inspection and testing of safety equipment isn't just recommended, it's essential for anyone who ventures offshore. The 5 minutes required to perform an ultraviolet inspection of your life raft's seams could mean the difference between life and death when everything else goes wrong. The Morrison tragedy also demonstrates the importance of understanding your safety equipment thoroughly. Bobby Morrison and his crew were experienced professionals who knew how to use their life raft properly, but they had no way of knowing about the hidden defect that ultimately claimed their lives. Education about equipment limitations and potential failure modes is just as important as knowing how to deploy the equipment in an emergency. Today, marine safety experts recommend that boat owners perform ultraviolet inspections of their life rafts annually in addition to the standard service requirements. The inspection takes only minutes, but provides invaluable peace of mind for anyone planning offshore passages. It's a small price to pay for the assurance that your most critical safety equipment will function properly when your life depends on it. The legacy of Captain Bobby Morrison, Maria Santos, Elena Rodriguez, Jake Morrison, and David Chen lives on in the safety improvements their sacrifice made possible. Their story serves as both a tragedy and a triumph. A tragedy of lives lost too soon, but a triumph of how their loss led to discoveries that will protect generations of future mariners. Every life raft inspection performed, every defective unit identified and replaced, and every life saved by improved safety protocols stands as a monument to their memory. Remember their names, remember their story, and most importantly, remember to check your life raft with ultraviolet light before your next offshore passage. It's the one simple thing that could save your life when everything else goes wrong at sea.